All right, everybody, we are back for another episode of the Summoning Hour, and you'll recognize a guest from just about a year ago, Mark McCready, president of Monarchs Esports Society, the esports group at Queen Margaret University in Scotland. Welcome back, Mark, and welcome to the show.
Hey, I know it's been a while. It's been, we were just saying it's been 12 months now, probably
Yeah,
more than that.
like 30 podcast episodes. I had to go back and be like, okay, let's see what we talked about. And I mean, now you've also grown in an additional role working at British Esports as the Scotland representative, so there's a lot to unpack there. But then
Yeah.
it sounds like you've also got a lot to talk about what's going on at your school, given that you've rebranded from uh, Queen Margaret University Esports to Monarchs Esports. And usually, what comes with the rebranding is a lot more effort from the school. So I'm curious to hear if that's the case this time around. But why don't you do a brief introduction about yourself outside of titles and roles and just what you've been up to? And we'll just kind of get the highlights from now.
Yeah. I'm so I'm just like everybody else. I'm a student that went to university with a passion of esports and gaming in particular. Um, I'm now going into my final year of university, studying human biology, which we spoke about last time was very drastically different. But yeah, I'm one of the biggest things is I'm involved in just about everything that I can get involved in. Um, whether that is something like soccer or when I came over to North America, American football, which I started to get more involved with and liking,
Nice.
uh, following the NCAA. Um, but yeah, gaming and esports has been something that I've always been involved with. And it was about this time last year I started up the society at Queen Margaret University, and from there we've started to develop and get more involved with students on campus, creating more opportunities for people to come together to play games, to hang out and get involved in some competitions and represent their own school or university. So
And
there's
and last time we spoke, like you were just getting started, like there wasn't much of a presence on campus, but how have things changed since then?
so yeah, I think when we last spoke, we were talking about the numbers. I remember we were talking about how it's a very different school to what you would traditionally think, and it's a very
Yeah.
small school as well compared to what you see over in the States. Um, we've got just over 6,000 students at the university, which is nothing compared to something like your UCLA. Um, and it's a very medical school. It's not so much built around game design or production. Um, it does have business departments, arts and crafts departments, but nothing really tech savvy, you could say.
And there was no formal sports clubs on campus. It was just like intramural, just for casual fun kind of sports on campus, just being small, the school not really supporting a huge athletic department. So I'm wondering how the shift has gone for that last year, given that again the rebranding is really key to me. I'm really curious about that.
I think, yeah, so like our school isn't heavily invested into its societies. I think because it's a smaller university as well, um, it probably doesn't have the same funding as some of the larger ones with the amount of students that are coming along. But yeah, they do try to pull the strings and to get things happening where they can. Um, with the esports society, it's taken off from when we last spoke, when we didn't even know how many numbers we were going to get on the first day. We're told that we'd only get like 10, 15, like the minimum required. We now ended up with 25 about Christmas time, and then that moved up to about the 30 mark. Um, we ended up having our own League of Legends team that, for people that had never played together before, um, competed in the National League for the NU, which is the National University Esports League. Um, competed in the national competitions and was one round out of qualifying for the playoffs. So
Dang, that's not bad at all.
it was a big achievement. I mean, we never made it to the playoffs, but to get to that point where they were competing against the other best teams across all the universities in the UK, not just Scotland, but all four nations, that was a big step moving forward. And we knew that we're a small university, but talent comes from all different sources of places. So it's there's definitely been a bit from events to the amount of people that are interested and people that are wanting to work with us over the upcoming year and the past year as well.
So, I mean, you've already exceeded your member growth and member numbers for the year, and now you're dealing with, like, you've already found success as well with your League of Legends team, and you want to keep that growth and everything going. And what's the COVID situation like with managing schools in the UK right now? Because a lot of schools right now, they're trying to find the best ways possible to keep their esports students involved and proactive. And here in the States, we have a bunch of tournaments going on, and there's been more involvement than ever that I've seen during the summer. So I'm curious if you've seen a lot of the same thing in the UK.
There's definitely still a lot going on. There's a lot of different competitions that are still going on to keep people motivated.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing that we've seen is it's a very difficult time for students, which not a lot of people might understand. We, from talking about Queen Margaret especially, is a very international university. Just looking at the society alone, you've got over, I'd say, 12 nationalities straight away that have all came from different places to one society. So there's the whole debates of people going back to their own country. What sort of support's being put there? Have they closed their borders? It's very stressful times because these people are paying rent as well. They're trying to work. They don't know when to tell work, I can't come back. There's a lot of situations and deadlines coming up, especially with some people that have the likes of resets, or they were ill during the time of their exam, so they now have to sit the exam for their first time during the reset period. And it's very confusing overall. But I think there's definitely been support from the esports side of it. I feel like gaming in general is usually that escape that some people take to get away from reality, to get a break. And people have been using that, whether that is to get into esports or just to relax. And there's definitely resources out there that we've been seeing. We've had, for the start of COVID, our society never really done anything because there was a lot going on, even within the committee. So we didn't even want to tap into the rest of the society because they were all doing their own things, trying to figure out how are they going to go home, when are they going to come back. But now we've started to figure out where our feet stand, and now we're looking at, okay, what can we do? So we've got the likes of Clash that goes on every 3 weeks.
Yep.
We've started pulling a couple of teams together. We've got 2 to 3 teams that we're putting together every week now, or every 3 weeks, to compete in Clash. And that's just been a good motivation of getting people to play a game together and have fun. And that's now led into us competing in the Summer Cup that NSE, the National Student Esports organisations, put together. So we're starting to slowly move back into getting people proactive and getting involved with esports again.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen that across a number of leagues out here, just being like, okay, student flexibility was the most important thing back in March and April in that timeline. And so, I mean, all things considered, that was still 4 or 5 months ago, so things really couldn't have changed that much. So having students being involved, even at this point over the summer, is just a big win. It could have been a whole lot worse, where people just have to drop everything and really stay focused on just their livelihood. And I know that's still the case for a lot of students and a lot of people in general. So it's good that we still have something going, but it could still be better, and we can't hold ourselves too accountable for the loss of productivity or activity, because this is just some serious weird stuff. So That's
Yeah.
and that's just how it goes. Like there's going to be problems, and there's some things that are just outside of control for us to manage and deal with. Now, going into the next school year, what are your hopes for the Monarchs to keep growing? Like, is there another student marker that you want, like student number mark? Is there another team you want to be able to spin up? More like school and faculty involvement? Is there anything like that you're looking for?
There's definitely a lot of growth. Um, from I'm sort of in the same position from last time where there's so much that can happen. Um, it's just what can you do with the time, really? I think the one big point was that COVID's hit and what effect that will have in the upcoming year. We've got for me personally, academically, my course is online for the first semester. So that's me sort of in the same position as yourself. For 2020, I don't need to be required in an office or on campus. So there's that sort of position and looking at how that fits in with students as well. And we actually think that's going to be an increase in students. A lot of it does sort of come down to the university and how they promote the societies during that period of time. There's not going to be that typical freshers fair, and if it is, it's going to be something completely different to what's happened in previous years. So it would be good to see how that works and how we can help support the university in terms of moving online as esports is nowadays. And there's still a lot of competitions. I've spoken to a lot of the community managers across the UK, and they're saying everything's going ahead because the one thing they see is a lot of students have made this sort of their schedule or their daily routines, or weekly routine, where they can compete once a week and they've got something to look forward to. Whether that if they are staying at home, they've got some motivation that they know they've still got things to do on top of university, even though it doesn't require physical presence anywhere, but it gets them involved with things and to hang out with their friends.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking from a resident advisor perspective, where I was helping kind of welcome in the freshmen and make sure that they had those social structures and involvement in their community and make sure that they felt welcome on campus, I imagine that that's an even bigger priority this year for a lot of leadership on campus and student leadership, is just making sure that they can keep everyone who's coming in and everyone who's been there to still feel involved and like that they are part of a community, because without that it's really hard to justify a lot of the benefit for going to college, at least in the States. Like the States, school's expensive, and so like you either go there for the education or you go there for the experience. And for a lot of people, if you can't make friends right away, if you can't find that social connection, it's just like a detrimental setback to being able to enjoy your time there. So being able to move esports online and keep everyone connected and even active, being part of a creative process behind the scenes, whatever's going on with your clubs and societies, like that's a huge advocate for more people being involved in esports, because people need that participation now more than ever.
Yep. I think people are just looking for that sort of engagement as well, where they can get that escape, as we're talking about. But yeah, there's I think it's a different time for a lot of the societies or the student unions to sort of adapt. And we've seen that as well, where people from the student union have come to us and said, what do you guys do? Like, how are you guys going to function in the upcoming year? And that's something they've took into thought when they're planning for what they're wanting to do for the entire student union with societies and sports teams.
Oh boy, that's going to be fun to figure out on the fly, just to see, because I mean, you can set all the plans up, you can do all the investigations, try and get general sentiments from players and students, and being like, how can we do anything to help you? What can we do to help? And until you're in that moment, until everyone's back in that process on the schedule, do you actually get to see what that interaction levels are going to be like? And then it's time to pivot and replan, reschedule, and so that's going to be a little nerve wracking, I'm sure. Outside of just trying to set the pace and set an example for other societies and keep your students involved and happy and engaged with their community, is there anything that you want for the club this year? Like more teams, more school involvement, anything like that? Funding?
Uh, that was a funny one from last year. I don't know if we discussed that last time. It was what money for traveling, which was definitely something we're probably not going to be getting for this year. I don't think anybody's going to be traveling.
But I mean, it's good because I mean, like you said last time, like the farthest school for you to go and participate was 4 hours away, but you have a whole bunch of other local schools, and now large gatherings still kind of put a pause on it. But like the fact that you can play an online match with someone right around the corner and have decent latency about that, as opposed to playing across time zones here in the States, across thousands of miles, like that's the difference. And so, I mean, a lot of schools don't have a lot of programs out here. So, University of Washington, and then a couple small schools, and their rival AAA school is on the other side of the state. So there's no way, it's like a 6-hour drive. So there's no way that they're going to be able to make that commute back and forth. Not that they should be, anyways, at this time, but like you have so many more schools in your area that are involved, especially with the British Esports Association, really connecting the countries together and bringing like that unifying position along with Newell. So let's jump into that. Let's jump into British Esports. I'm curious how you got involved there and what their real purpose is across the UK.
So, I'll tell you about British Esports. British Esports is the national body, not the governing body, that's been put in place by Chester King, who's the CEO of British Esports Association. The whole objective behind it is to help support and provide some sort of guidance to people that are getting into esports or would like to learn more about it. There's a lot of people out there that are wondering about how they can, what sort of role they would have within it, what sort of roles are within the industry, how does esports benefit them, is there any health benefits, can they use it as an educational tool. There's a lot of different aspects that are being discussed even now, going into further detail of what esports can really accomplish within the likes of an educational setting. There's been a lot of different projects that we've pulled together and we're still working on. One of the ones is our BTEC qualification that's now going live in schools this upcoming semester across the UK. And that's also going to be launched worldwide as well for colleges and countries all around the world to participate and use esports as an educational tool for people to get involved with for younger students. So we're working on that with Pearson, who's our partner company on it. They've helped us write the qualification and helping us push that out to schools and colleges to get involved. But yeah, there's a lot of different people that are sort of on board. We've got Tom Dorr, who's the head of education, who helped actually write the qualification and is also a current practicing teacher in England. So he's still teaching whilst he's been helping out with British Esports and balancing that juggle. I don't know how he's done it, but he's fantastic. And then we've got a fantastic team across the board, from Dom helping us out with the articles and helping us put out a good PR standpoint, with Morgan helping with marketing. But yeah, there's a lot of different people that are involved helping build this together from all different backgrounds, whether it's education, journalism, even talking about Chester himself, who's sitting on the Global Esports Federation, the International Olympic Committee. So there's a lot of different positions that we're trying to pull together to staple in esports as an actual sport, well, not sport, as an actual activity. within the UK, and that it has a ground for people to get involved with.
Yeah, and I mean that's all wonderful, and I wish we had some more organizations like that were really driving a lot. Like in the States, we have NACE and CSL and TESPA and all sorts of different orgs that are really trying to push forward the formalizing the competitive side of it, but not
Yep.
a whole lot of effort towards like really educating people on the benefits of esports and really trying to drive it together and have like a really consistent vision for it and how it can be applied to different schools. Every school is kind of out for themselves right now, and depending on whether or not they've bought into one division or another, like it doesn't really play a huge impact on things. And we're starting to get some connectivity between high schools and college leagues, and starting to get a little bit more of that feeder system. So high schoolers with talents are being recognized and potentially being even recruited by some of our universities. So that's a nice step, but I definitely like the approach that the British Esports Association is taking right now. And like just looking at their website, I love that there's first and foremost, it's like, okay, here's our latest news, but then here's advice, the championships, putting competition up there like secondary to the latest news that's going on, and then education and women in esports are right next to it. And just scrolling through the news, like you can see that there's women represented on the front page, and when you it's not just the front page because of the recent Me Too movement or anything like that, but you load more news and it's just women front and center mixed in with men as well, just all the way down, and just a lot of recognition for diversity and including women in esports. And that's just been a real hot button topic lately. So it's great to see this actually being talked about and seeing the British Esports Association walk the walk as well. So and getting an interview with Alice Powell, driver, which I know like virtual driving has gotten a huge boost over the last several months, and driving was one of those first things to really cross into mainstream during COVID about returning to competition and stuff. So both F1 and NASCAR in the States, like we saw a lot of boom and a lot of interest in esports because of that. But now you've got a woman also driving a bit of that face in the UK. That's just a great place to be and a great resource to be able to tap into, and a great mantra for a business to really be able to say we are promoting this for everyone in education, which just you can't go wrong with that level of support.
With one of the things we were talking about at the start of the year when I joined British Esports in January, it was my first big thing was actually an advisory board meeting. So we have an advisory board where we've got people representing separate games that have a high knowledge or a high skilled knowledge of the game that can help advise us, and if there's a game that we're not particularly sure about. I know personally the racing esports, I'm not too knowledgeable on it. It was always something that I never got involved with. But then talking to likes of like Nick Egan, who's our Formula One advisor, there was a lot of things that he was just passionate about telling me about and letting me understand more about. And it's sort of bringing people together that were highly intellectual in what they love to do, and discussing about it and helping people learn more about how they can get involved. I think that's one of the biggest aspects we've seen is especially with the work I'm doing in Scotland, there's a lot of pockets of people doing their own things, but it would be so much better to have them talking between each other to see what they can do to help move forward. But with the women, with us having that advisory board, we're talking about why don't we have a women in games committee? Why don't we have an advisory board for that, where we can collect a lot of the top esports influencers within the industry in the UK, bring them into one place and say, how do we push this forward? How do we promote women within gaming and esports? And how do we work with external organizations to allow this and to highlight the work that's been done, to show that there is diversity in the top level and that it's being promoted?
I would see a future interview or content with the women's Dignitas or Dignitas's women's Counter-Strike team. Like they have just been dominant for years. So like being able to get them to come out and talk about their experiences could be just a huge move for advocacy and how, teaching these universities how to really involve women and represent women and find ways to reach out to them that just hasn't been a strategy up to this point because they have lived that life for a number of years now, and it's always kind of in this colossal shadow of a male dominant esports ecosystem, but they have proven time and time again that they're talented and that they go through a lot of crap. So like it would be a huge perspective, I think, to be able to represent that and start inspiring other women gamers to be like, yeah, I want to play competitively. I think that would be fantastic. We've seen a few in the States really kind of come to prominence, but never felt like that they really got the support that they needed. So knowing that that's happening at a professional level, you know that's happening at a high school and a college level as well. So the sooner that schools can be interacting together and talking to each other about this with general advice coming from professionals, from people who have strategies around this kind of behavior or treatment, like this could be like like a, a big changing moment for esports to really be able to talk at an early age about involving women. We saw a lot of the same discussions like 6-8 years ago and ongoing now about getting women into science and technology and electronics and computer science degrees, all that kind of stuff. Like we saw that conversation happening, and now we're seeing it again in the games industry and we're seeing it in esports. So this is a huge wave for everyone to be able to ride.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done, and we've already, from me coming into British esports, we'd already achieved like a lot of things that not a lot of other countries have managed to do. One of the biggest things is we work with UKIE, which is the UK Interactive Entertainment, which is the governing body of digital media within the UK. They work with the British government in terms of that sort of area. And it's about having these sort of partnerships and working together collectively to address these things and to say that esports has the potential and it has such a good structure that can be built around it. And if we can achieve that structure and put the support and guidance in place to all these colleges and universities and high schools, then we can really achieve a lot. We can really promote people from all different backgrounds to go and release their full potential. I think with the BTEC that we've created, it has a lot of potential within it as well. We're looking at it to go from a very low level to a very high level within colleges. So in the UK, we have a slightly different education system where our colleges are separate from universities. We call colleges further education and then universities higher education. There's not really much difference between the two. You've got colleges that are a lot different. You can go to become like an electrician, for example. You wouldn't go to university to become an electrician.
Gotcha.
So it's more academic as you go to university. But within our colleges, what we see is a lot of people go to college to then go to university. So it's a good middle ground between high school and university for people that are lost, you could say, or they've not found something that they can engage with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And when you look at esports, it's something that within that age group, you see a lot of people between 20 to 30 or 18 to 20, 18 to 30, not 18 to 20, 18 years old to 30 years old who are figuring out life. And you probably have a lot of them that are involved in games. And with esports being a suitable qualification, we're looking at it as a sort of Trojan horse, if you will, where it gets people in to become educated in what they want to do. It gives them the opportunity to go and study more psychology. What's the psychology behind esports? How does that fit into an esports situation within teams, with players? The events management side's another module that's in it, where people can create their own event on the college campus, where they can learn more about how do you set up an esports event. There's the marketing aspects, you've got the entrepreneurship aspects, there's nutrition and diet. There's a lot of different things that are now started to bring in. I think one of the biggest ones I've seen is XL, that comes out of the UK. They're now changing their focus to being more unique around the player's health and well-being. They want to have that as their staple, like, trademark. Is if you go to Excel, it's because of how well they manage your progression, around your health and well-being, and how they can make you a better player through getting sleep, basically, and getting exercise, and being able to talk to people and having that psychology support.
That's really important. Like, I think the team that I think does that the best, at least out of the North American organizations, is probably Complexity, just because they're owned and partnered with the Dallas Cowboys, one of the biggest franchises in the country, and it's an NFL team. So they have the dietitians, the recovery therapists, they have the actual rehab therapists, they have like the whole medical bay available to their esports team as well, and they're located on the same professional campus, so they get a lot of that attention that you see in the American Football League, like really that high level treatment, because they're celebrities, and that team just makes stupid amounts of money, so the esports team gets to write off of that benefit, and they get treated right because they have the facilities and the people who can help take care of that. And having another team look into that, especially around mental health, is a big deal. It's a huge topic in esports, and it's been trending for like the last year or so, after some losses of popular streamers, or after you see all the burnout from people in like the Overwatch League and even Call of Duty League, and a number of other of the professionals who have been playing. They'll retire to be a content creator first and foremost, because it's taken a toll on their body. And so the more that we can start talking about training for a longevity at the professional level, and start instilling that down to the high school levels, like that way at college, university, high school levels, it just means that we're doing that much better practices and all. And I don't think it'll take long for those things to get down to the pee-wee and the elementary, like first school tier kind of leagues, which I'm excited for. Like, I don't know about you, but I can't wait to see like 5 and 6 year olds playing League of Legends. Like, you see their first soccer experiences where they're all just huddling around the ball and chasing it everywhere. I can't wait to see all random, all mid, just top lane, bottom lane, mid. Like, that's going to be a lot of fun. Like, I am excited to see that.
I mean, it's one of the things that we're talking about as well, is you've got the likes of like Rocket League as well, that's 3 years old and older. You've got League of Legends. I think that's a 7+ in the UK or in Europe. But even still, like, these young ages and getting people involved, I think it's just a hesitancy right now around. There's not a lot of solid, concrete research for it to be introduced to schools. It can be introduced to schools, but I think to break that barrier, it needs somebody to come along and say, no, it is okay. Like, it is good for them to get involved, and it is good for their development. And I think that's the big breakthrough that we're waiting for primary schools, especially now we're into high schools and helping support high schools, and teachers are starting to learn that it's just like having a football team. But there's career aspects that come out with actually playing the game, that they can go to college and university to develop further and to go into this industry. And if they don't, then they still have these skills to go elsewhere, to whatever they want to do in life. If you leave with a marketing degree, you're not stuck with esports, you're stuck with marketing in general across multiple businesses.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm super bullish on esports because of that whole idea of, just because you practice something here doesn't mean it's, you practice something in esports doesn't mean it's not applicable elsewhere. Like, not a lot of schools will teach how to be a good salesperson. They'll teach you marketing strategies, and like, here's some scripts to follow that give you an idea, but like the charisma and the charm is something that you have to come into on your own. And making brand deals right now is the biggest advocate for any society, club, professional organization. If you can learn to talk to a brand and have the data ready to go and sell yourself, the group that you're representing, like that's a huge win for yourself, and you will be able to take that into any organization, any industry. So, and I mean, that goes across video production, video editing, social media. Like, you listed off a whole bunch of other things as well. So, like, it's just a good place to really try and find yourself, and you don't have to stay in esports. Like, I don't. It's funny because a lot of the students I talk to, they don't actually plan on staying in esports. They're just like, this is a lot of fun for me right now. I get to meet a whole bunch of people. I get to play the games that I like and play it at a level I've never been able to play it. But when I'm done here, I'm gonna go be an auditor for the IRS. I'm gonna go work a supply chain job. Like, I'm gonna start my own franchise. Like, okay, cool, that's great. And but it's all those different personalities and those interests that are being brought together so that it's creating a common language for everyone. And that connectivity to a community is so important that this is just going to be a huge benefit once we have more schools coming online with that central focus of knowing that this is good for students, that this is good for their universities and their college campuses, both in person and online, which online is just that new area that everyone has to take into consideration more so than ever. So there's a lot that everyone gets to figure out, but we're in a good spot to have that figured out.
I think one of the big things about the students that needs to be encouraged more is that entrepreneurial aspect. Not to go and set up your own company, but also to encourage them to go set up their own companies. But to look at esports as a new industry, it's very startup still. Although you have these multi-million dollar, pound, euro competitions all around the world now, it's phenomenal what's been achieved in such a small scale of time. But it's still a growing industry. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be put in place. And one of the big ones that I've been told from people in my society and university is, what do you want to do with it? Or how would I get involved with it? Like, there's no jobs there that I want to do. There are jobs that are going and there's a lot of applicants going for it. But with a new industry, create your job. Create the demand for it. There was no Scotland representative role. But me saying exactly what I can do within Scotland and the developments that we can make, that was something that they wanted from me at British Esports to work on their team, is we can work together and put all the resources together to help promote it in Scotland and also Northern Ireland.
That makes so much sense. And like, you have to be able, looks like you're cutting out a little bit. We'll let you catch up.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, we're only talking across a few thousand miles, so
even that as well. Be a network engineer.
Yeah, there you go. Be a network engineer. If you can solve netcode for all fighting games, you've just brought a whole genre of games into the esports community.
Exactly. There's another one as well. One of the biggest ones that's being developed right now is 5G. And 5G is going to be completely game-changing for the likes of the fighting game communities, because it's the latency between it all is why people want to be in person for these competitions. Yep. But if 5G can cancel that out and create low ping rates, you could start to see fighting games go online. You never know. I think it's something within the fighting game community they would need to talk about. But I think if you can break that barrier, there's no reason why they can't.
I think that's going to be an interesting culture clash. You're going to have the hardcore FGC going to be like, it has to be in person. Otherwise, it's just, we don't trust technology, or it's just like, even that slightest, like 1/10 of a hiccup, 1/10 of a second hiccup, like, it's not going to be good enough for them. But then a whole bunch of other people, or like even potentially the younger fighting game community, they're just going to go, I can play online. I don't have to see these guys every week. I don't have to train against the same people week in, week out and hope that my region is any good so that I can compete in a larger scale at like Evo or any of the big tournaments on the East Coast, West Coast here in the States. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic when we see how good 5G is actually for everyone.
Yeah. Especially with the likes of across the Atlantic between North America and Europe. That'll be, once that breaks, that's going to be phenomenal, because then you can really test who's better.
I mean,
you might actually scrap regions.
Yeah, jeez. I mean, how would that go? Like, we kind of see a little bit with it, like the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League, how they travel back, or they were supposed to travel back and forth, but we still haven't seen that proven, that regionality proven of traveling and doing lands that way. But if you can take out that whole travel perspective and needing to do that for competitive integrity, if you could take that out, and then you start talking, okay, Europe and NA are now constantly embattled in a whole bunch of different leagues, as opposed to here's your division, here's my division, we'll get together for a major every 4 months or whatever. Like, if you can just put them all in the same league and really see how that pans out.
There's no EU solo queue anymore. It's just an international solo queue.
That would be intense.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting. I think something you were talking about earlier as well was the whole sort of like traveling between the universities in Scotland. And I was actually talking to NSE about this. Was there's a lot of events, and if there's going to be a national tournament or final for the whole UK, it's always down in London. And there's not a lot of events happening in Scotland. And that's not of a point of saying, okay, well, the finals needs to move to Scotland. That's the only way that this is going to solve the problem. It's more of looking at what can happen in Scotland to encourage people to go to events, because not a lot of people can travel down to support the university or anything like that. It's more of, is there a way that we can have an event where people from the society can go and cheer on their societies and create that atmosphere? Because that's not possible when it's a 7-hour drive, 8-hour drive down to London, or an hour flight. It's not going to work, and especially with the flight times at like 6 o'clock in the morning, nobody's getting out of bed at 2 to get that flight. So,
I mean, you and I I've heard stories you've had to organize students before, but like a whole bunch of college students having to get up at 2 as opposed to going to bed at 2, like that's a very different conversation.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see when they go to bed or if they go to bed. But no, that's one of the big ones that we've been working on, and I think that's one of the reasons to why I'm now working with British Esports, was the work that I'm trying to do with the universities and with the Scottish community as a whole. I think I'm mostly working on the university side, because it's a maze if you start to try and solve the big problem itself. So working with the universities, we wanted to create that area where universities can come together into one place, whether that's a Discord server or somewhere else online. We've managed to get them onto this one server where all the committees are there from the 15 universities, and they can now collaborate on anything they wish. It means that we can now work more effectively with the likes of the NEO and NSE within universities to create more events. So if we're looking for LAN events, there's now something that they can easily get access to set up an event and be like, okay, if there's going to be something in Glasgow, then they can get in touch with the 4 universities in Glasgow and set something up. So it's starting to open up these channels and to create the opportunities between. And we're already seeing it across the board with the top team in Scotland right now, Heriot Watt, now working with Warwick, that just had a Battle of the Wolves because their logos or their mascots are both wolves. So they had a big 2-day competition to have fun with it. And that got put front page Twitch, and albeit Heriot Watt got destroyed, but it was I mean, it was fun. It was good to see. It's good to see students get involved with it, and they were involved in the production and the casting side. It was just the sake of NEO helped sort of coordinate and help out a little bit, and to get that front page to give full exposure to what students are really doing. I think that's the important part at the end of the day, is there's a lot of students across the place in Scotland. Maybe not compared to America, but if you look at Edinburgh itself, the capital of Scotland, it's got more than 1,000 students that are participating with esports in gaming societies and the universities. So if you then provide a platform like that to 1,000 students, never mind the other major cities in Scotland or Glasgow who have about 2,000 students that are engaging with esports, there's got to be at least one or two of them to create something.
Yeah,
So
one or two of them are going to be like your extreme drivers, but then you still have 10 to 20% who want to focus on this, who want to really
yeah,
create something that they'll be proud of. And then the rest, like you kind of get diminishing returns, but they're still willing to put in some effort, some amount of help. A lot of them will just need to be told what do you need, what you need help with, basically, and they'll be willing to help. Like the students I've talked to in collegiate esports are some of the most like relaxed and just open to helping one way or another than I've talked to professionally even. So knowing that you have 1,000 people located nearby willing to do some amount of work or a lot of work or be inspiring to other people to create something brand new, like that's a great place to be in terms of trying to get something really started.
I think students get lost a lot as well. Of they think they're doing something, but then they give up because they're not sure how to move forward with it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that needs to be broken through as well. Is they need to ask for that help and support where it's there, and there's usually somebody online or has done it previously. Um, One of the big ones is looking at what talent has come out of Scotland, um, and have made it to these big finals or in part of the production teams. I mean, we've got the likes of like Scrub Killer for Rocket League, who went on and won the RLCS championships, World Championships with Team Vitality. He's still in high school
Dang,
in
man.
Scotland. You've got Marky Douda, also world champion from, I believe, the east coast of Scotland. Um, you've you've got a lot of different people across. You've got Snoopy, who was one of the original of League of Legends for CLG. There's a lot of talent across the board, and it's about just seeing how we can help support future talent coming through, and if they can somehow uh, offload some of that information and guidance to them, then you could start to see a better channel of talent coming through, especially through the collegiate systems.
And I can't wait for that moment when people recognize the amount of talent and the amount of future proofing that you can have in esports by hiring these students who are motivated in collegiate esports. Like, I know a lot of people are still looking at professional esport players as the epitome of what you would want to do, much like how they look at anyone in traditional sports of like, that's where you want to be. You don't want to be the camera guy behind it. You don't want to be the producer doing the live show. But there are people who want to be doing that. And so when you get to this opportunity of thinking about how you're going to fill out these professional esports companies 5-10 years from now, it's going to be with the young bloods, the people who are coming in with this passion and who have the experience because they've been doing it at a collegiate level, not just because they're content creators, not just because they happen to be in the right place at the right time and applied for a job at the org. It's going to be they have built a resume around this, and it's going to be highly competitive the next 5 to 10 years. Just ridiculously competitive to get into one of these orgs. We saw it kind of with the games industry in the early 2000s, late 90s. There was a big boom there, and like a lot suddenly is like, oh, you can be a professional game developer. Who knew? Like that was that conversation. We're going to have that same conversation. We're already having that same conversation right now with esports, but in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be cemented that the students who went through college or collegiate esports, they're going to be the ones who know what it takes to run something good, but then also know where it needs to be taken because they'll have made those mistakes. They'll have asked for those lessons in college, and they'll know the natural evolution of all of their lessons shortly thereafter when they're in a professional environment and they have the full-on support of that group to really push things.
Yeah, one of the something that I'm really excited about, and it's something that I'm where my profession in human biology starts to kick in, is we've got a lot of talent coming out of colleges, even in North America and the universities over here. Um, and even when you look at the likes of COVID that's happening right now, a lot of the attention turns to the universities of what research do they even have to back this? What studies are going on? Where's the academic papers? Who's actually writing the papers? What's the sort of stature of this person behind? Is it something we can trust? Is it something that we need to take with a pinch of salt? Um, I think one of the biggest ones for us is the British Medical Journal is the most important, one of the most important and reliable sources out there, because of its high quality of publication for medicine. There's nothing like that right now across esports, and I think that's something that gets looked over a lot as well. So we're seeing more students going on to do master's projects and PhDs, or even doing their honors projects in esports, whether that's the event side or the business, financing, marketing sides, but it's also in the likes of the psychology sides of it, or the health and well-being sides, how esports has an effect in the total body. Sitting in front of screens, does that have an effect on you? There's a lot of different discussions to be having, and it would be interesting to see how that works. I know there's Professor Andy Maya at Salford University. I had a great discussion with him, and he also sits on our advisory board at British Esports. And he's looking to create something similar. He's looking to look at articles and bringing them together, the ones that actually have strong evidence behind, so that there's a journal of some sort that people can then rely on and go to then take and reference. So it's something that I'm quite excited that that's now being discussed and it's been brought to attention.
Absolutely. Like when you get that scientific aspect behind it and you start seeing the benefits of it, but then even some of the negatives of it, you still, just because there's a negative doesn't mean that there's not a solution to it. So then you can create, like you said, pretty much at the very beginning, you can create your job in esports by finding a problem that no one else has solved yet. You can find your way in and create that necessity for your position. And having data like this, having people log their experiences in a meaningful way that can teach other people other aspects, like you've just opened the door, you've just opened 5 to 10 more doors for other people to explore. You may not be the right person to explore those things, but someone else will be. Someone else will find that interesting, or like a particular challenge that they'll want to solve, and it's moving everything forward. And again, having a publication that really solidifies the authenticity of the information makes it that much more appealing for people to get involved with, because they know that there is a future in this thing.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest part, is just showing that potential and opportunity for students, especially when they don't exactly know what they're going to do after college. I think that's the biggest part, and just helping support them and put guidance in place, especially young students that are going into university or college and opening up all these different doors, because then it doesn't stop people from going and playing a traditional sport and then getting involved with esports at the side. That's actually encouraged because you want them to have the best of both. You want them to be able to experience as much as possible at such a young age, so when they do get to the end of college, they can say, do you know what, I kind of like this, I want to give this a try. And if it fails, it fails. You can always try and pick yourself back up and get on with something else. But I think esports is definitely something that students should be engaging with and getting involved if they're into gaming.
Absolutely. And now we're coming up to the top of an hour. It's already been an hour. Again, it always goes by faster. It seems like these episodes go by faster and faster for me now. So why don't you let people know where they might be able to contact you, or British Esports Association, the Monarch Esports, all that. Let it all fly, just so that people know how that they can start getting involved.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to get in touch with me or to follow what my sort of progression through esports and life is, my Twitter handle is Mark McCready UK. I think it's in the title of this, anyways. My name just add a UK in the end. With the Monarchs, we've got a lot of different things coming up. We've been working on a lot of different projects that we can't really talk about right now because we want to keep it on the hush hush. But we're going to be talking a bit more about that and releasing things on our Twitter. So that's at Monarchs Esports on Twitter. And with British Esports especially, there's a lot of big things that we've already done and looking to achieve in the future in helping engage children within high schools and colleges. So that's at British Esports, all one word, British Esports on Twitter. And you can also find it at britishesports.org as well. There's a lot of exciting articles, and we also have a newsletter that Tom puts together every week, which is fantastic. So it'd be great to have people sign up and learn more about what we're doing through that.
And I have to say, like, outside of the Esports Observer, Esports Insider, like, this website probably has some of the most articles that I've seen, some of the most active social media, and just efforts in esports. So it's definitely worth your time to check out and just learn what this group is up to and make it part of your daily or weekly news rotation, just to see what's happening elsewhere across the world. Well, thanks for coming out again. It was great chatting with you. I love hearing that you've had so much progression with moving into another position, keeping Queen Margaret's going, all of that, even amidst all this global pandemic. It's great to hear you being successful and hearing that collegiate esports is still growing in the UK. As usual, as more developments come up, hopefully maybe not in a year's time, you can always come back and we'll talk some more. And if you want to bring in some more folks from British Esports Association, I'm happy to promote them in that group. They've done a great job from what I've been able to keep track of and everything. And hiring you is also just another vote of confidence from me, just from our previous conversation, what I see you posting. So congratulations on everything so far. I'm looking forward to another productive school year for you, and hopefully hear more about UK esports going forward.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to come back on. I always love these conversations and getting to sit down and just talk about esports without actually having to do work on it. So it's always good fun. It's always good fun.
All right. Well, thanks everyone who came out to chat. You will also see the podcast episode going out tomorrow, 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for those in the U.S., 6 a.m. on the East Coast, which means that'll be about 11 a.m. tomorrow BST. So that'll be nice.
I'll be right to bed.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. I miss those days. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks again, Mark. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you.